welcome back. I hope you are enjoying your weekend. I hope that you are taking care of yourself, and I hope that you are doing great. So let's just get right in. This past week on Wednesday, I believe, I posted a tip and a trick on how to tackle the side view, or drawing or painting objects from the side view. And essentially it was having two sides. One side was darker shaded, and the second side was brightly shaded or had a bright shade. And I did realize that I should probably elaborate on it more, so that I give you a better understanding on how I came up with that trick, or how I started to implement that trick in simple things. And I also realized that I gave 3 steps, but at the 3rd step I had a completed building, and I understand that not everybody in pixel arts is at that stage where they fully understand how I went from step 2, which was just having 2 squares next to each other, to step 3 where I had a finished building. So I decided to properly explain that so that you fully understand how I implemented that, especially when it comes to more trickier things where you are using, or you have a limited color palette, but you still want to bring out a certain detail, like a windowsill, for example. So I will explain that now. I'm just going to quickly basically do the same thing I did in the tips and tricks. Essentially what you want to do is draw your first side, or your darker side, which is usually a very dark shade. It depends on how much of a side view you're looking at, but for this one I'll make it a little bit smaller. And then you draw your light side, which will be a much brighter or lighter shade, and I'll make this side longer so it has a more side view to it. Okay, and at this point this was the second step of the tips, of having one dark side and one light side. And so from here, essentially what I did was that I went from I actually thought about this part and said, okay, this part right here is the darker side, and this is where the light is coming from. So from this point over here, this is where the light is coming from, and then here, or this side here, is where the darkness is being shown. So if I wanted to create or turn this into a building, for example, how exactly would I do that? So first of all, I probably create a shape, and I do that maybe like giving it a roof, or some kind of roof, just to show that nothing too complicated. Obviously I may need to make some changes as I go, but yeah, nothing too complicated, trying to keep it sort of similar. And then going here, I can then more or less just fill in the rest of the information, kind of joining it or continuing from there, and then sort of trying to mimic what is over here, so that essentially I have made the same shape going forward, so it looks the same. It's not inconsistent. It kind of looks, or it gives the impression that it is the same shape overall. So from there, then I went to somewhere around here. It's kind of an advanced tip, I would say, but you can definitely still start implementing it, and you'd probably notice the difference very soon, of just erasing maybe usually 1 or 2, I'd say 2 pixels in from the side, and maybe even you can do it from here, but I usually start putting the darker details here. So actually, let me just fix this real quick. Alright, yeah, something like that. Okay. And then from here I'm going to actually introduce a third shade, which would be much darker than the other two, and more or less just like pull it all the way to where the brightest shade stops. And as you can see already, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. You can see that it already feels like there's something in between or something darker there. And if you want to, let's say you wanted to continue this all the way to the brighter shade without actually messing things up, how would you do that? So it's the same thing, is the same thing applied here, using the dark shade, like the next darker shade, to shade it in. You would pick from here, or you would pick this color that's used on this side right here and apply it here. So by doing that, you would also basically just draw the same, and just make sure that's correct, and you basically like draw the same shape here, and maybe even knock it out by 1 instead of 2. The reason I said 1 here instead of 2 is because you're looking, the view is made so you're kind of looking at it from this area, so obviously here would be a lot more bigger and then here would be smaller. It's just kind of like a perspective thing, but here would be more prominent and then here would be not as prominent, which is why it's kind of shorter, or I made the shape smaller. And so when you knock it out by like 1 pixel here instead of 2 as we did over here, it gives the impression that okay, this is actually more detailed. You can see a lot more of this side than you can see of this side. And then from going there, that's like a simple like indent, and it also just gives your shapes more shape, so as to speak. And so if you wanted to do something that's like, I'm just using the building as an example, you can use this on any object as you're detailing it, but if I wanted to do a door, for example, how would I do that in a side view without actually making a mess of things? So it's the same concept as this part of taking this shape over here, or taking this color over here and then applying it here. So I'm just going to do that, and then more or less just draw a rectangle or whatever shape I want my door to be, and then fill that in. And after filling it in, well, yeah, it actually gives the impression that, oh, it looks like a door already. But even to take this maybe 1 step further, I can then pick the darkest part, which was this little indent we made here, and actually make like some kind of door frame inside. And it already looks like there's some kind of space inside here, so it's not a solid block or something, there's a space inside. And then from there you can go on detailing and adding more things. What I did in the tips, or something I did in the tips, was I took the white shade here and then kind of used the line tool to make this kind of diagonal or some kind of frame, giving a frame to the door per se, so it actually made the door feel more, I say, at home, or have more of a structure. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Give the door a bit more structure, and already you can see it kind of feels like there's a lot more going on. And you can replicate this part. You can even choose, I would say, to copy it. If you don't want to redraw the whole thing, you can choose to copy it and paste it and bring it even here again. I'm probably just going to have to fix some things. Yeah, I can already see I didn't fully copy, but you can erase, make the erasings that you need to do, and then erase here. And now this feels like a pillar of some sort, or some kind of part of the building that actually extends, so it's not just one whole big shape. You've kind of broken it down. In a sense, it's easier on the eyes or something like that, and So the final part about this was the windows. For example, how would you do the windows? So it's the same concept with the door, but the problem that may come up for you is how would you apply that to an already dark shade. We've been doing this on the light shape, or the light side, so it's much easier to apply these things. But what about applying details on the dark side without losing the detail you're trying to bring out? So I would say what I did was to kind of reverse the technique. So to choose the light shape or the light color and kind of bring it here and fill it in. Now the problem with that, if you just leave it at this, is that it kind of makes it look like there's another side of the building that is receiving the lights from this end. And so if you wanted to say make it so that it actually looks like a window, I would actually suggest putting this, you put this first, and then you would also need to use the darkest side of it, so the darkest shape or the darkest shade you have, and sort of like bring that under and fill that in. Now your question may be, okay, so I've done that and I filled it in, but now it looks like there's an indent or some kind of shadow. Then you bring, to fix that, you also bring the light shape. I know it's kind of getting advanced now, but you kind of bring the light shape here and fill that in. And after doing so, if you kind of take a step back, if you take a step back, it's starting to look like a window, but there's still something missing, which is the shading, of course. So that is where you would probably need to take the, more or less kind of apply the same thing. You take this shape here, but so that you don't lose the details or lose what you're trying to go for, you would bring it like that and then color it in or fill it in, and then maybe even go a step further by bringing it all the way that way, and then also erasing or kind of like coloring it in and coloring that side in. So it's just more or less making the window sort of look like it's actually has a different side to it. I'm actually just going to use the darkest shade here and actually shade that in, and I think that actually gives it a better understanding without actually losing it. Now you can also go even a step further, especially if you have more to your palette than limiting, or you've limited yourself to a couple of colors. You can go outside, I would say, and introduce another color which is even brighter than this one and shade that in, which is, I think that's actually what I did in the tips and tricks. And then you can take this and sort of fill that part in, and all of a sudden, because I've used a different color, if you zoom out, it actually looks like a windowsill with an actual window and some more space inside, or some kind of light inside. You can also do the same thing with the door as well. Take the same shape and kind of fill those two parts in, and all of a sudden now the house or whatever building you're making actually seems to have life inside, or there's something living inside, there's some kind of light that's emitting from there. And yeah, that is basically how I came to step 3 of it. I hope this helped, and hopefully this made a lot more sense than just the 2 boxes, and you're actually able to understand the thought process of actually coming to making these sort of not too fine, but sort of fine details on windows and making a door frame and indents in your buildings to make them more interesting than just having flat surfaces and whatnot. So I really do hope this helped, and I will be seeing you later. Make sure to take care of yourself, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and see you later.